Okay, hi everyone. This is the second barriers talk between being and women in industrial design, Chicago. Before we begin, we'll just go through the ground rules really quick. Number 1, be respectful. Number 2, be self-aware. Number 3, assume good intentions, and that's for us, the panelists, and the audience. We're going to be discussing today women in sports and the idea that women need a voice at the table within the sports industry. Just a quick introduction. So women, for example, women who play sports face many obstacles today, such as lower pay, less media coverage, and different injuries compared to their male counterparts. So we're going to be discussing the differences that women endure between the sports industry, and then we're going to apply that to design too. Another fact, women make up 54% of enrollment at 832 schools that responded to a study in 2000. However, only 41% of these account as athletes. And we can see the differences between design as well. So we've got sports equipment such as golf, where the equipment can actually affect or be inappropriate for their build, strength, level, and swing speed. There's plenty of other barriers. We've got less sponsorship, lower wages, and less visibility within industry and sports. Lack of resources for female athletes, including specific clothing, physique, and female-specific medical care. More at risk for on-the-job harassment and possible parental, cultural, adult influences. So this is a difference that's been noticed already, and we've got groups like Go Equal. We've got groups like Women's Sports Foundation, which was actually set up in the 70s, who look to just open the playing field and discuss. And we also have brands such as Society 9, entrepreneurs who address women's lifestyle boxing and allow them to perform with the right gear for women and not just the boxing community as a whole. And then we've got bigger brands and industries such as Nike. We've got the Nike hijab, a prime example of a large company addressing athletes who can be marginalized with their needs not being addressed often. They developed a hijab that was lighter in weight, more suitable for competition, allowing wearers to move freely and hear their surroundings and stay in place reliably. This is actually a really big milestone and is one of the steps that people are making to address changes and differences in the industry. So thanks for the quick introduction. For part 1, so this is part 1, I'm going to introduce Jasmine Kent, who will be joining us today. She is a run apparel designer at Under Armour. And we also have Betsy Barnhart, who is a product design program director at the University of Kansas. And then in part 2, later on today, we'll have Brittany Pierone. And in both of these sections will be me. I'm an industrial designer and also part of the Women in Industrial Design group in Chicago. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Jasmine, are you happy to sort of talk to us about your experiences and your background?
Yeah, so well, like she said, I'm a designer at Under Armour. I make run apparel for both men and women products, which I find really interesting. My background is I got my bachelor's in architecture. I decided to go back and get my master's in industrial design from NC State. And my thesis project, I decided to design a plus-size sports bra meant for high impact. So I've used that to basically apply for Under Armour. I started off on their women's training team as an associate bra designer, and I recently moved last year over to their run team. So that's a short background for me.
Awesome. What about you, Betsy?
Thanks for having me. First of all, this is really great. I'm super excited for all the talks that you guys are putting together. I think it's really important and fantastic. I'm the program director at University of Kansas. I've been here, this is the start of my 3rd year here. I was at Iowa State University as an assistant professor for 3 years before that. And for the past 10 years, I've been a sporting goods designer, designing men's and women's lacrosse and field hockey equipment, both soft goods and hard goods, for STX Lacrosse licensee for Nike design. So we design all of Nike's products except for footwear and apparel. So I was a design manager at STX before I left, and then have been fortunate for the past 5 years to continue with them designing product, mainly in the hard goods, or totally in the hard goods category for men's and women's Nike and STX Lacrosse. And before that, I started out in housewares at Newell Rubbermaid, and I thought that's where I really wanted to be. And just like so many people, I was not what I wanted to do. And then did some exhibit design and sort of fell into sporting goods, and I couldn't love it more. I love everything about sporting goods, just how intense it is, and designing for performance and really making an impact on people. And similar to Jasmine, I didn't start out in undergrad in industrial design. I did fine art. I went to Alfred University for fine arts for sculpture, ceramics, and painting, which now I'm like, this is such a great experience for industrial design. And then went to grad school at RIT for industrial design. So, and did furniture. So I've kind of been all over the place. And now I'm on the IDSA Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, a leader for that. And there's just so many exciting things happening for women and minorities right now in the field.
Wow, so you both got loads of experience. I mean, Jasmine, would you care to share probably one of the best things about working in the sports industry so far, or the biggest thing that's happening right now?
The biggest thing happening right now is coronavirus, but I think that's been pretty significant for our run team, because we've seen such an uptick in people buying run apparel, buying run shoes, and downloading Map My Run by Under Armour. And I don't know, it seems like since no one can go to the gym, no one can do all these different things, the one thing they figure they can do is that they can run. And like those challenges, like 100 miles in May or 50 miles in July, and doing those and having virtual run clubs and having virtual run partners has really made our run business like just skyrocket. And that's kind of what's been coming through when we've been like looking at old SS21 and fall winter 21 projections, and people are asking for more styles and asking for more colorways, and it's really increased our business. So I think it's been really cool to see that everyone realized that they can be a runner. It doesn't matter what type of athlete you are or what you do. Running really is like a foundational exercise for every sport, and I think that's what's been super exciting for me.
That's great. That's so exciting. Before I ask you more questions, can I ask all attendees to remember to use the Q&A box? If they want to ask anything, please feel free, and I'll try to work them in. What about you, Betsy? What do you think is the biggest project you've been working on right now, or what do you feel is most important to you currently?
Right now, there's been some exciting things happen for women in lacrosse. Like, we just came out with the first ever women's draw, specializing for the draw lacrosse head. And before, it had been other heads that had been, used for that were good for that. So I see more products that are geared specifically towards performance, which is really exciting. And I think with people having more of a conversation about race and diversity in the field, I think there's opportunities right now to diversify design teams. I think that's really exciting, and not just have it be tokenism, like one person designing for female athletes, but having a diverse team across the board.
Yeah, and so for both you and Jasmine, do you feel that you work in diverse teams? Do you think there's work to be done still? Do you think it's a growing area?
I think there's work to be done still. I mean, at Under Armour, they've recently started putting on these different webinars bi-weekly just to learn about racism, to learn about diversity in the workplace, and more importantly, to learn about inclusion and equity, because I feel like diversity is just a checkbox, but inclusion and equity is when it really comes to like, are you listening to your counterparts? Are you listening to what they say? Is what they said being applied, or is it just being, pushed to the side? So I think those things have come through, but I think our teams still need to be more diverse. Like, it was interesting because obviously before we got on the call with the attendees, we were talking about how there's all women designing women products. And like, that's good, but wouldn't it be good for also men to be in it and to kind of learn about women's product, and they can have a different perspective and bring to it, and also learn from us, and we can have that exchange. Like, that dialogue is really important. So I think our teams are they still need some more diversity. I'd say I'm the only Black woman on our run design team, but we do have all women, which is cool.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think it just takes one step at a time, but I think that we're heading in the right direction, and progress is sometimes just very slow.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of that. I think progress is pretty slow. I've seen a lot just as a faculty member. I've had every year working with major sporting brands with students for sponsored studios, and it's pretty consistent that our students who get out, a lot of the women end up going into soft goods design and sporting goods and not hard goods design. And I think as a field in general that women aren't seeing this, aren't getting a seat at the table for hard goods, for product. So there's some in footwear, not a ton. And there's a lot in, bags and any apparel, soft goods, but hard goods, it's really not happening. And you're really not seeing, I was really fortunate with STX in that our team, it grew while I was there. Started with 5 and I was the only female, but we brought in another woman designer, and we all had men's and women's hard and soft goods. It was really equitable across the line, and we worked really hard to bring people in. It was a really great team, and we worked really hard to bring people in that were open and not, there's that bro culture thing, not that bro culture where just like, why is that even a thing? We're gonna avoid that through asking it was a fairly intensive interview process, but the people that we brought in were really fantastic. But I've had so many students who have interviewed places and they're like, yeah, there's 15 men. And then they'll ask me, are you comfortable working in a bro culture? And it's just like, why are you even asking that? And like, I put up a post today, I was talking to a friend, it's like, that's like saying, would we be comfortable if they said, would you be comfortable working in a racist culture? Like, why is that not this, it's equivalent. Why is that even a thing? So there's a ton of work to be done, and then not pigeonholing, like Jasmine was saying, women and just women's sports, and then making a film to market your 50 design team, and then you have one token female designer and one CMF designer and one female engineer, and you make a film about it and post it. I have a hard time with that because I think it's disingenuous. I think it's really bad. And why not have women in all of your design teams, men in all of your design teams? We know that makes a big difference for product. So that's my passion.
Definitely. I mean, like, that's the core of feminism, isn't it? Like, you want it to be equal for everyone. You don't want it to be, shouldn't be just women designing for women, because we want everyone to learn from each other. And I think that needs to happen internally before it can be shown externally. I mean, when you guys started working within the sports industry, did you feel that women were presented differently as to how you were perceived? Like, if you were to use that apparel yourself, were you presented in the way that you'd like to be presented?
Do you mean for the athletes, the users, or do you mean for the designers?
For the users mostly. So from a user point of view, did you feel that women were being perceived how you wanted them to be perceived?
I'd say women they were perceived through maybe one person's lens, like one man's lens, and this is what he thought our only female consumer was like. And so as designers, or at least especially for me this season, I had to really like do a deep dive and do some design research and like lay it out for them, like, this is what runners look like, and they're all completely different, but this is them on the spectrum of short distance to long distance and novice to professional, and these are our personas, and here are some things that motivate them to run. Here are their goals, here are their motivations. And like, that's what makes you a runner, not how you look or who you are or your gender or your disability. It's just about your goals for running and what you want to get out of it. And I had to I worked on that probably like 3 weeks, and it really it was more so for me to show to our director of apparel, look at all these runners we need to design for, and look at our platforms that are missing these styles that are needed for these different runners. But then it just got bubbled up. And our chief design officer was like, this is how we need each category to understand their consumer, so you can tell us what our essentials are in your category and tell us what some flagship products are and blah, 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 blah. So it became way bigger than I expected. But I think it was good though, because it was I guess I was just dying to have someone understand that there's more than one type of runner, that there are female runners, that there are mothers who run, that there are dads who run with their children, that there are people who run that are plus size, and they just weren't included in our category, in our product line. And it was very obvious to me, but it was hard to say because, okay, I'm a designer, I just design stuff. I don't know anything about the business, but we do. So yeah. It becomes an extra task, but it's necessary as well to show that you have that business knowledge and the consumer knowledge. Because a lot of times as a designer, you can be left out of those conversations and they just tell you what to make. But I think that we're closer to the business and the consumer than they think we are. And a lot of times we have to show that value as well.
Awesome. I mean, when you design products for women, are there, and there obviously are, but are there key differences that weren't being looked at before, weren't being addressed in terms of even physical appearance, comfort, fit? Was it the things that they were making, were they appropriate for the sports they were trying to target for?
Yeah, it was off the mark. When I first got to STX, they had no research, and none of the companies, it wasn't just STX, they're actually pretty great. I think they're the top contenders for, taking women seriously in sport, for lacrosse and field hockey. But they had it was all male design team, which wasn't necessarily the problem. It was more, it wasn't a problem. They had designed a product that looked nice, but they hadn't done all the FEA, the CAD analysis to see how that product would perform, as they had a very rigorous field testing regimen for men's product, where they'd be, going out repeatedly for new product and for categories. And they didn't have that as robust of work involved for women's product. And so when I got there, I was like, we should really do that. We should really, and they were totally game. But, it took someone saying, it's just like Jasmine, with the example for the different runners. And I've had a few students now who have had very similar experiences where just nobody was saying anything. Nobody was speaking up saying, and that's where having a diverse, design team makes a difference, because then you have people saying, wait, you're missing a lot here, a whole lot. And so, and just even voicing it, because it's not that people won't be receptive, it's that if it's not even being said, they don't realize what they're doing or what they're missing. So it's not that people are, evil people, it's just, I don't know. And so we started, totally revamped everything. So now our women's categories have the same level of investment in time and product testing and, user feedback. And women for sports product are really different than men, and not in how they review it when you're doing player feedback, because that's what's so great. And what I love so much about sporting goods design is having that, it's got to look awesome. You can totally change how that person feels about how they're going to go, when they're going to go play. You can transform, their attitude by the look, the feel, everything, but it has to perform. And men, you'll go online and you'll see, thousands of reviews from 13-year-old boys reviewing seriously a lacrosse head, and everything about it, and they notice everything. And then you'll look for women and there aren't any. And so that doesn't mean that women don't deserve really great product and that they don't care. It's just, you just have to talk to them in a different way. So you can't just, do the Google search for what do women think about the product. you have to go out and test product, and you have to talk to them, and it's just a different deal. And I've heard people sort of talk down about women athletes because of that. But it doesn't mean that they don't deserve equal amount of attention and product that's at the same level. They deserve like an aggressive look, like there's no more for a product that I've been a part of in my team, no more flowers on, and no more, no more, that would be like in the plastic, like, no, these are tough, aggressive, they're intimidating, you're in the field with them, and it's like, oh my gosh, they want to look scary, they want to look mean, they're not like, trying to look like sexy on the field, they're like intimidating and legit. So give them product that speaks to that.
I can't tell you how many flower prints we have had as like a woman's moment before. And it's just like, I don't really want flowers, but if you think that we want pink flowers, go ahead. I'm not on the print team.
The most popular product line was blacked out. Black lacrosse head, black everything, black overmold, black handle, tough, like mean, like give them mean, let them be mean. So
I want to intimidate.
Yeah.
You mentioned a bit about testing on users, Betsy. So I guess for both of you, like, do you have specific like methodologies, or what kind of user research phases do you go through when you're designing a product, soft or hard?
Under Armour is like so robust that we have a really large like innovation team, and even like an innovation team that like just tests and works with athletes, which is mainly around footwear, because I feel like that's like the largest revenue driver. So, but when I was on the bra team, we did outsource like some research to, I believe, I don't know why the name is escaping me, but either way, it was biomechanics for breasts. So we could take a look at, breast motion while the woman athlete is like in motion, and seeing how we can support her without, completely restraining her. So that was one of the largest things I think we did for something called the Infinity Bra we have online right now. And that's gotten a lot of really good reviews because it's one of our fastest drying pads. It has like visual tech that, I guess our sales accountants were really, really interested in. They really love being able to see technology. They don't like it to totally be covered up. And I think that was really interesting just because the design was mainly informed by the biomechanics. And that was probably the first time that we did do any breast research for our sports bras outside of like a regular wear test, where we'll have athletes, take a bra, test it for 3 weeks. They have to work out a certain amount of times a day and tell us what they did and give us feedback in different bullet points. But this time it was much more extensive.
And we, for hard goods, it's pretty intense. It's like a 1.5 year product development cycle, where you start out just doing a lot of slow motion footage, a lot of interviews, a lot of for existing product, and then 3D print and jerry rig together some Frankenstein options to try and hit performance that you're looking for, if it's hard, speaking specifically about hard goods, and then testing those at the collegiate level and the high school level, depending on what level it's at, and getting feedback. And there's always a couple of players that'll be exceptional for women specifically for giving feedback, so consistently returning to those players. And then we have a team, it's a smaller group. So it's usually a designer with a product manager and an engineer that are all participating in that, which is nice. And then we'll get samples in from the manufacturer and test those out and make edits. But it's pretty, and we'll do a lot of FEA, the CAD analysis to see how it's gonna perform in a whole series of everything. So yeah, there's a lot of, it's pretty intense.
Pretty intense. I mean,
I want ours to be that intense.
What's that?
But I wish ours was that intense. But I found her name. It's Dr. Skur from the University of Portsmouth. That's who we worked with for that Infinity Bra. Y'all should check it out.
Notes for everyone watching. I guess focusing on yourselves, being women in a design team, have you seen that change or progress over time, or what were your first impressions of working in a design team? Like Betsy, you mentioned, what if you're okay working in a bro culture? Do you think that's improved in any way?
I think it depends on where it is. I think there's some firms in some places that have a real, and people will say, I mean, it's just common knowledge that it's a bro culture, and that can be at, you know, a really large corporation or a smaller design team. And then there's others that are better, and we worked really hard to not have that. I don't know if it's getting better or not. I don't think so. This is negative. I don't think so. I've had enough students in this week. I had 3 different students reach out about bro culture. I get a lot of calls and texts from students asking questions, and it's come up because I was like, yeah, this is still a thing. So I don't know. I think if you work at it and you're careful about who you bring in and you make it a real point of, this is something that we're not going to have happen, then you can change that. But you have to be really on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's hard to change bro culture because to me, I'd equate it to, like, you know, microaggressions daily. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand microaggressions. They're like, oh, well, that was just a joke, or I was just playing, or I didn't mean that, or, you know, it's small things that they think don't need fixing at all, but those small things happen 10, 15 times a day, every day, and you just get worn down by it. So I think it's hard to show just how damaging it is to people who are involved in bro culture. And I think that bro culture came out of just wanting to make work not such a formal place to work. Like, you want to have fun at work. So they thought they're doing something good by making it like very friendly. You're my bro. What's up, bro? And it's not that way. And so now having to break that down, I think for people who are involved in bro culture, they feel like they're losing something when in fact they wouldn't be.
Yeah, I guess it's something, it feels like you kind of need, does it feel like that you have to do more work to make them understand that you're actually on their side?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in academia, I'm just going to speak, I had much fewer instances of that. I had positive experiences in workplaces, but I had a lot of issues with it in academia. I went, like I said before, I went to art school for undergrad, and the culture for students and faculty was zero tolerance for, you know, sexist attitudes or anything. It was, and you'd be called out. It was very vocal against that. And it was also, you know, kind of like late 90s, whatever, but like PC culture. But the, like, there's a Guerrilla Girls group, all of it was pretty for real. And then when I got to grad school, I had a lot of experience making. I love model making. I'd worked in a shop for a long time. And so I was the manager of the shop, and students would be calling me sweetie and honey. And I was just like, are you kidding? I couldn't believe it. And they were so sexist to their peers. And I would just call them out and just say, no, you're not going to do this. So I had kind of I guess, you know, people thought I was, you know, like a feminist, whatever, like in a negative way. And I was like, no, I'm not. I just need some respect, like a base minimal, like amount. And I said to a professor, I just walked up and I said, I need to talk to you. You have a real problem with sexism here. And he just said, no, you don't. No, we don't. And walked away. And then when I got to Iowa State, the students would question me. If I said something, they would question me and they wouldn't believe it. And so then I was told at the beginning of each class, you need to present your work so that they respect you. And so now it's super awkward. I get a little embarrassed every time I do it because I'm like, this is weird, but whatever. But I show my work every class at the beginning. So I'm like, I know what I'm talking about, but I know that they wouldn't be like that if I didn't show my work at the beginning. And just like, I know what I'm doing, you know, I have authority. And I know that my male counterparts don't do that.
I think that's good. Could show authority though. Like at my first internship, I was at a design consultancy and it was all men, like on the ID part. they had like ID and they had graphic design, and graphic design was all women. And I was the only woman on the ID portion. And for me, I wasn't in like a position of authority. I was in a position of I'm here because I'm wanting to learn and I'm trying to get involved on as many projects as I can. But for me, it was really hard to speak up or to be listened to, because at first I was timid. I wasn't sure if I was qualified to be where I was. That was just my personal insecurity. But I didn't have that support system around me to be like, oh, let me see what your idea is, or let me talk to you about this. And so I had to just really build up this, I don't know, fake confidence until it became real about, this is what I think this should be. This is why, these are my sketches for it. But I was like, just working twice as hard, or like feeling like I had to outdo my counterparts as opposed to be able to just work with them. And it seemed like they were working with each other so easily and seamlessly. And for me, it was just really hard to do that. And of course they would make jokes and like, I don't know, jokes about sex, which would be male jokes about sex. And it's like, oh, so I guess I have to like laugh so that they don't feel like I'm being offended, so that they don't feel awkward. But I feel awkward in this whole circle of like, should I laugh? Should I not laugh? If I do laugh, is she kind of nasty? I don't know. Yeah. It was weird. And I think that might be why you see a lot of women going to soft goods or wherever you see them, because they feel like they're in a place where they can be heard, as opposed to, oh, I really want to design this. It's just that you're in a better work culture, and work is more about, not just about what you do. Like, you need the work-life balance. Like, I have a daughter, she goes to daycare, I need to pick her up at a certain time, I need to be able to leave if I have doctor's appointments for her or for myself. Like, work isn't just what you do. You really have to be able to have that understanding and feel included there and belong, like you belong. And so that what you do will actually be used, and you don't feel like what you do is just a waste. And also, you just need to be able to live your life as well and it not be punished by the people around you.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that gets overlooked by a mainly male-dominated workplace, isn't it? The life of being a mother. I don't have personal experience of that, but I know that there's always the back thought, isn't there? There was always, well, what if I want to have children? Or have you ever shared any experiences on that, or had any awkward situations? I mean, that's not even to do with sports design. That's just the design industry, isn't it?
Betsy, do you want to go?
Sure. I've got 2 kids. First grader will be next week, first grader and third grader. And I was really lucky when I was during the recession, the Great Recession. I had been unemployed, as everyone was. And I got a call from STX to come in, and I started, and then found out I was pregnant, like I think within a week, and I just about had a heart attack. It was just awful. And it was awesome. And the fact that I'm saying awful is terrible. Just that by itself is like,
it shows
yeah, what the heck? But it's terrible. But it was really scary, because there's no laws. They didn't have to keep me on. They didn't have to give me maternity leave. They didn't have to give me paid leave. They could have just let me go, because it was within 3 months of starting. So it's that trial period. They could have had, no. And luckily I had a really amazing boss, Chris Saturnio, who I called up at work in the back room, 2 months in, and it was still earlier than I would normally, or I guess it was right around like the 3-month mark. But I called him and I just said, I have news. I was like shaking. I was so nervous. I was like, I'm pregnant. And his words, I'll never forget. He was just like, that's amazing. And I was like, and I just started crying. And now I'm like, whenever anybody tells you they're pregnant, you just need to say, that's amazing. I'm so excited. Even if you're like, no, like it's going to screw everything up. And so I got really lucky. Like, they were just so supportive through having both kids. And that's something too, where I was also vocal later on, saying like, I need to be able to leave. Like, I was in Baltimore at the time, the commute was crazy. So like, and I had 2 kids in 2 different daycares. And so I had to leave early. So we only had desktops. I needed a desktop at home, and they provided that for me so I could work, off hours from home. And like, they were just really good about it. But I'm always surprised that every single talk that I give, young women will ask, I don't know if I'll be able, can I have a family? Like they're wondering, and I'm like, why is that even a question? Like that wouldn't occur to me that that should be a question, which I think speaks to a broader, like what's being communicated to them in school about the culture in ID that's so ruthless and relentless that they can't, it's like, I wouldn't expect to hear that from other fields. Like, why is that a thing? So that's, I think that's something that just overall we need to work on more. But I know that people do switch out of those cultures that aren't really receptive and helpful into like soft goods where there's more women or academia or whatever. And like there's that you do get a lot of loss. Like how many women are there who aren't in management, who are still doing design work after they have kids? I think that's a moment of self-reflection for any business, is what's happening to their women as they go through.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I didn't have much of a choice because I got pregnant my last year of grad school. So I had my child like 4 months before I got my job at Under Armour. So it was like, well, you're just gonna have to take me with the infant, you know. I didn't like say I was pregnant to anyone, but when I did go to my interview, I had to ask like on the side, is there a pumping room I can use? Cause I'm, you know, on the clock. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. And Under Armour has mother's rooms. And I was just like, this is the place for me. Like, cause I've heard a lot of moms having to like pump in closets or bathrooms because their business, it doesn't think about mothers like that. But I guess our mother's rooms were something that was like a recent development. But you can work in there. They have a refrigerator. They have a sink. You can schedule when you need to go in there. And that was really awesome. It was only hard for me because I had a very difficult manager who also had 2 young kids. But it just somehow, she didn't extend any grace to me. And like, I had a difficult time starting a new job and still having to pump and take time away from work, then go back to work, and also having to like sometimes leave work for my child and stuff. And so I don't know. I mean, you can have a family, but like Betsy said, it really just depends on the culture and the team that you're on. So if your team really values work-life balance, like my team now, they say it's a life-work balance. They don't say work-life, they say life-work. And they don't ask me why I'm leaving or if I have to go. They don't ask my reasons. They just respect that I need to go and I'm not taking advantage of it. It's something that I need, that's necessary for me. And that's what like your job provides you with. But at my last job, it was, why are you going? What are you doing? I don't think you need to do this or do that. And I'm just like, why is everything that I'm doing being judged right now? So that's what I was saying earlier. Really, designing isn't only about what you do when you end up getting to the corporate world. It's about, can you live your life in design and be happy and prioritize the way you need to prioritize. So yeah, you can have a family, but I hope you find the team and the culture that supports that. You need a supportive culture, not just a culture that's like okay and tolerates. Like you really need acceptance and support, like lifting up.
Yeah. So it's a big case of trust as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you consider hoping for a supportive company to work for being a barrier into the design industry? Do you think that's something that is that why some women feel they need to ask about having families?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like right now I wouldn't ask. If I find a place that doesn't allow me to prioritize my family, I'm going to leave. It's just simple as that. I don't know what else to say. I'd have to go.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it, it's students who are asking that, and from all over the place. So, and I'm always just like, wait, so somebody's telling them, or they're getting feedback that it's not an option. I'm like, I think, it's always an option. It's just advocating for yourself and finding the right spot and not putting up with it. Like, yeah, you've got options.
Yeah. I remember I was trying to get an internship. Like while I was still in the process of applying for jobs, I got an interview for an internship in South Carolina. And I think I was getting close to getting hired. It was sounding like good. All the interviews went really well. They liked my work and things that I was saying, but it kind of came to a bit of like, I guess, a tension point when they asked me like about living with the other interns. And I was like, well, I have a child, so can I just like live on my own? And they're like, well, no, we have all our interns live together. And I'm like, well, why would I do that? I'm like, I'm 29 years old. What in the world? Well, then I wasn't 29. I was like 27. But still, like, I haven't lived with anyone since I was like 21. why am I going to do that now? And why is that a requirement for this internship? And then I think once that happened, I was like, I wish I didn't say anything, because I feel like now they're going to call back and tell me I didn't get the internship. Like, why did I say that? And I didn't get it. I'll never know why, but I know when the conversation started to change. And it's just like, if you do want to have a family, I feel like, yeah, not every option will be available to you, but it doesn't mean that you won't get the right option.
Okay. That's really interesting. I mean, in going back to being a mother or being pregnant, do you think the sports industry reflects that? Is that a gap in the market? I personally haven't seen a lot of products that cater towards that.
Yeah, it's a gap. Everyone loves Nike so much, but we saw Allison Felix leave Nike like that. She was done because they wanted to pay her 70% less once she had her child. Imagine having a child and then your job can't even pay you 50% of what you used to get paid. Or you can't even get paid at all. Like, a child is expensive. Daycare is expensive. You got to take time off. It's just like, oh, you have a child. Well, now you're basically unemployed. And she has like the most gold medals. I was a track athlete in college, if you can't tell. Anyways, she has 6 gold medals, the most gold medals of any female. She was their top athlete, female athlete. And they said, we're going to cut you because you had a child. We're going to cut your pay. That's why she left and went to Athleta. But I mean, of course, they changed their policy now to where, here you go. Yeah, this is a shark. Sorry.
That's okay, it's part of the talk.
You can't see it because of my virtual background. Anyways, here you go. So yeah, like, they cut her basically and gave her 70% of the pay. And it's just, she went to Athleta because they actually support mothers. And so we still have a lot of more like work to do in that area, because you can't just basically penalize someone for having a child. And that's what's happening at all the businesses that we see, like when they don't have work-life balance, when they don't have, you know, paid time off or paid leave, or when they don't give you flexible work options, we're being penalized for having a family at the end of the day.
That's potentially a barrier then, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, what was going to say? Guys, do we have any more questions from anyone on the topic of diversity? That's it. I know, Jasmine, you have a background in kind of creating communities for Black designers. Is that something that you'd like to talk about?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess I somehow went into this diversity inclusion thing by accident. But basically, after undergrad, I was having trouble finding jobs, and maybe I don't know if everyone goes to this weird period after undergraduate. You can't figure out your life. You don't know what you're supposed to do, blah, blah, blah. So I was in that phase of my life, and I was just like, I feel like I need some support. I need some people who look like me to help me support, just because, I mean, I don't know if it was like just by chance, but no matter what, through college, whenever it came to like when I got a helping hand or support, it was a Black person that did it for me. Like, I mean, I'm not saying a white person wouldn't help me out or Indian person, but it just always ended up being that way. So I would look for other Black designers to ask about their experience in working, and their experience typically being the only Black designer where they are, their experience in mentorship and climbing the corporate ladder and just getting jobs. So we created like a group me called Blacks in Design. And then from there, we decided we wanted to have like a conference, but we thought conferences were just kind of too formal and sometimes boring. So we found a really interesting idea called like a unconference, and it was like a retreat basically. Like you would retreat there with like a few people. It'd be really intimate numbers, like 20 or less. Like our first retreat was probably like 10 people because no one knew about us. But we wanted to have people come and talk and everyone be on the same level. So we had speakers who there was no stages, there was no panels. There was always like fireside chats or this circle chat, this breakout room. And what we called it was the Hue Design Summit. So now we've had our 4th summit this year. It was virtual, but it's really been great just creating that community and coming and talking to people, because we have a lot of people in different stages of their life. It's like, I just started school, or I want to pivot. I'm 10 years into my career, but I want to pivot, do something else. Or I'm wondering how to get a mentor, and just people in different places that, one, they want to continue their design education, two, they want to learn more about the professional environment, like how do I negotiate my salary, or how can I change my job responsibilities, or anything like that. And then other people just want to be inspired. Like, I have these side projects that I want to do, but I'm nervous because I don't know how to do this or that. And like, they come and they get encouraged by the people around them. And so that community has been like really sacred for me, and really loving, because it always kind of pushes you and kind of makes you think about design, like, what's my purpose in design, as opposed to like, I'm just, working and doing design because I like it. Like, it becomes more about just putting purpose in your steps as opposed to just taking steps. So that's something that has become pretty big for us. And I guess since we're a Black community, it's become about diversity when we get sponsors. But I wouldn't say that we always call ourselves like diversity, equity, and inclusion. It just happened to be that way.
I mean, we've got a really good question here. The question is, how do you become an advocate and get those around you to also be an advocate? So that for you, Jasmine, would be maybe the diversity or designing proper apparel for women. And then for you, Betsy, it could be the underrepresentation of women in the design industry. Like, so how do you encourage people to get involved?
I think just, it hasn't been a conversation in the past. And now there's, like, when I first started at Iowa State, there weren't any women in ID groups at all. You would look online, there was nothing. And just talking about it a lot, it sounds sort of obvious, but having it be a conversation at all, bringing it up in the, like, for students, bringing it up with their faculty. Because if you do, for men and women will respond the same way, saying this isn't a problem, that we have equal representation, because there's something that happens where minority numbers, others in the majority will perceive that it's not as bad as it is. That's a real thing. So you have to actually say, well, actually, no, we only have 30% female participation in our program, and only one of our female students is moving into the workplace. Yeah. The rest of them are falling off, where we have a greater percentage of male. So I think it's really just talking about it and reaching out to people and different, I mean, it's right now we're sort of at where engineering and architecture was in 1970 in industrial design. There's no published numbers on how many women or minority by minority breakdown or for what the numbers are for participation in the field, which means that it's never, because the teams are so small for industrial design generally at different work environments, you can't see what a big problem it is. And then you'll have UX UI, there's more women in, and there's more women in CMF, and those will be lumped into industrial design. So then you don't see that there's no women on your product design, industrial design side, but your numbers are skewed. So you actually have to do the work to look more in depth and bring it up. And men have to start participating with that as well, because they are the ones right now. So many design firms, it's all male. And so they have to be making an effort and not say, I mean, I've been in the interview process where we say, this person's not going to be a cultural fit. And it's just like, well, what is that? Like, do you want everyone to be exactly the same? Like, everybody's going to want to go drink whiskey every Friday night? Like, I don't want to go drink whiskey on Friday night. I want to go home and have pizza and watch a movie with my kids. Like, that's what I want to do. I don't want to hang out with you after work. Sorry, no, I have a life outside of work. But that's really seen now. Or like going on a camping trip with the design team. That's great for younger people, but that's really hard for older people. So it's just like thinking about it, just being aware. I think it sounds so low bar, but we're at a really low bar place right now. And then really just working on getting those numbers, which I'm working on as I'm now on, and I'm so not a numbers person, but now I'm in charge of getting the numbers for the DEIC through IDSA. So I'm like, okay, we're going to do this, but we're going to get the numbers and get them published. So if people are asking you, we found out that for IDSA, it's under like 20% response rate for race on the check boxes. Or, I mean, I know maybe not 20%, but it's terrible. Like, we can't publish it because there's not enough response for race. And so if you're white or Black or Asian or whatever, you need to check that box. so low bar. But if you do that, then we can have the data and then we can publish it and then say, yeah, look, we have terrible numbers, much worse than any other field in design, but we can't say that with authority right now. It's just, I know, and nobody cares if you know, you've got to prove it. Like if you think, not I know, if you think. So yeah, so but everybody can, if you speak out about it, and I think that's from my shift from the art school experience where all the women did speak out very loudly all the time about all of it, to ID school experience where the women really don't want to speak out about it, and then women in industry really don't want to participate in it because they've worked really hard. Just like Jasmine said before, you've got to be even better than your male counterparts. Like I've got male students who are fine, and I'm like, wow, you got that job. And the fine women, they don't get the job. It's the exceptional women that get the job. So, so by speaking out and making it an issue, that is going to help a lot just to get it so it's a conversation.
Yeah, I agree. Starting that conversation is really big. And I've seen something else that really helps people kind of sign on and become advocates is just kind of being able to have a project, and you kind of have that project where you don't have any diversity on it and you see what comes out of it. And then you add diversity to it and kind of see what comes out of it. And I think that was something that was shown just through like basically after George Floyd and like seeing companies' responses, because people were really loud on social media, and Under Armour got their fair share of responses because their first response was just, we stand for equality, and that was it. And then after that, they went back to posting regular sports posts, and people were in there like decimating them in the comments, like what's going on here, blah, blah, this is a terrible response, blah, blah, blah. All you do is represent Black athletes and sell stuff to Black athletes, and this is all you have to say. So then they come back and they're like, well, let's talk to our Black employee teammate resource group and see what they have to say and see what our responses should be and blah, blah, blah. So they added in the diversity and they listened to what they had to say, and we came up with those action plans. I'm obviously on the Black employee resource group. And so it was interesting to see. It's like, okay, well, now that y'all saw y'all's first response made by whomever that team was terrible, you come to us to see how you should actually respond. And I think having that example is like, well, that's good, because now they know like we need these different people to be at the table so we can have the correct response or have the correct products or have the correct this and that, because we are a sports brand and everyone plays sports, not just one type of person. So they have to be diverse. They have to. Even if they didn't want to, they have to.
Great. I mean, I think just to round it off, we'll have a final question, and that'll be from me. I'll say, moving forwards, what do you think the sports industry needs to really work on most or focus on the most to improve its output and its reach across many levels of diversity?
So many answers.
So many.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I think making sure, like we said before, diverse teams. So you have more creativity and more innovation happening. If you have a diverse team, racially, backgrounds, women, men, all of it. Taking women athletes seriously, paying women you need to pay women athletes the same amount as they should. I think it's 0.4% right now for how much women athletes are paid compared to men for sponsorship, just for that. Just not just team sports, how much they're making on their teams. So it's pretty pathetic. And then really taking women seriously, not having women. I was talking to a friend who's a professional skier, and she was saying, like, if you go in to buy skis, the women's product that you buy is like equivalent to like a Nissan Leaf for their top tier women's category product compared to like a Porsche for the men. The amount of investment and how seriously they're taking it. And so she's like, yeah, she just skis on a men's product. All the professional skiers are just skiing on the men's, because the women's, the bar is so, it's just not equivalent, and that's a real problem. And so, and the people who work there aren't going to say, you know, you should just get the men's product, it's a better product. They're being sold this lesser quality product. And, you know, there's a lot of women who ski, and there's a lot of badass women skiers out there who deserve product that's awesome. And then the other thing is, like, it's not the ski and like golf clubs, like, it doesn't need to be necessarily specifically for women. It's really just about, for that product, it needs to be hitting like their strength and their weight and their like ability, not necessarily like for women, because sometimes right now, not so often, that means an inferior product, which is unbelievable. And then for teams, just speak up. Everybody just needs, you don't have to be like, you know, all over it all the time, but just making people aware of what's going on in the workplace for diversity issues and women, and call it like, and for faculty, calling it out, call it out. You know, if I say something that's, you know, if I say like, if I'm just thinking of something like, oh, you know, the doctor, and then I'll just be like, that was sexist. And I'll do that kind of constantly, just calling it out, just so they start thinking about it. You know, if it's women or men, like if I just really try to have that be part of the class where I'm not, you know, harping on them. And then having, like, I taught a class and had all women and speakers, you know, doing stuff and not saying anything about it, but just having it happen, making an effort to bring in that diversity.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like she said, there's a lot of things that need to be done at one time, but for me, I guess the first thing I would say is just our company needs to look like our consumers. Like, it needs to look like the people that we represent, the people that we sell to. And I think if that was the case, we'd be able to make a lot more diverse product and product that people actually need, and not guess. We don't always have to guess. And I mean, even, I know it's apparel, so we always divide things among men and women because their body types are different. We have to fit the clothing different. But another talk that we've had is about co-gender product, or not even co-gender anymore, all gender product. And how do we, you know, make a certain block for that body type, or can we even, you know, create that body type? But just like basically trying to erase the fact that men will have superior product than women. Like, if we have something that's in between, but that's up here, couldn't that be something that we can all have and that we can all enjoy? And I think co-gender packs are really, like, speak to all different type of people. And it's not just going to be pink because they think pink is for women, or that red is for men. You know, a lot of times when we talk about color, we can say that, oh, we've seen this blue and this orange for men over the past 5 seasons. Why do we keep doing that? We don't only just stereotype for women, we stereotype for like what men should look like too. So how can we start to kind of erase those thoughts, or just, I don't know, just erase those barriers in our mind that we already put up about what men should look like, what women should look like, by challenging ourselves to what does all gender look like, what could co-gender be, and just, I really just think that our company should look like our consumers.
Absolutely. I'm going to stop there. I think this has been a really, really healthy conversation. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Betsy, for joining. I hope everyone watching has enjoyed our talk and has learned something new about design, sports, and women. And I'll see you all for the next part 2 in about 3 hours. So thank you very much, everyone.
Great time.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yes, our pleasure.